Hello, my name is Tom Stapleton, and here we are on December 9th, the year 2020. And we're going to be talking about one of our programs that we usually do in the baseball season called the Red Sox Review. So what are we doing with the Red Sox in the middle of December? Well, as you all know, during the pandemic that we are in now, the season was a little cut short. So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss a few things that most people don't know about. And to my right, I have Frank Fiorentino, and to his right, we have Richard Reidy. And they're going to be talking about the financial situations of the Red Sox and maybe some other teams too. They have a lot of information to get through. So, Frank, why don't we just start with you? You can take it from here.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everybody. This is sort of the hot stove league, as it used to be called, when we talk baseball in the winter season. But I thought today, as Tom mentioned, that we're going to talk about a little bit about the finances of Major League Baseball and how it pertains to each team and the salary cap, etc. Because most of you baseball fans have heard the name salary cap and what it means. And we're going to talk about the finances of Major League Baseball and what it costs Major League teams to operate, etc. So I'm going to begin with talking about something that's in the minds of everybody over the course of the last year. Is when Mookie Betts was traded to the Dodgers, you all heard about the name salary cap. What does that mean? Well, it means that Major League Baseball has set a dollar amount, which this coming year is $215 million. I'm rounding off the number. Which means that teams can spend up to $215 million on salaries of players. If they go over that amount, there is what is called a penalty, and therefore it ranges from 20% to 45%. The first time you go over the salary cap limit, the amount that you go over, you have to give Major League Baseball back 20% of those dollar amounts. And where does that money go? That money goes to Major League Baseball, and it's split up among the 32 teams equally. If you continue to go over this, it gets higher. It gets to be 30% in the second year. And if you continue to go over, it goes as high as 40%. So you can be paying a lot of money for not only salaries, but for the penalties, so-called, of going over this salary cap. And so the Red Sox were over the salary cap for almost the fourth consecutive year. And they were paying the amounts in excess of $210 million at that time, of $50 to $60 million over the salary cap, and paying 45% of that money to Major League Baseball. And once you go over the fourth year, you stay at the 45 level for as long as you're over. So the Sox decided that they could not continue to do this. So that's why they let go some of these players, like Price, that had $98 million left in his salary. You had Porcello, who wasn't renewed. Chris Sale got signed for big money, so they're still obligated to him. Mookie Betts was looking at $30 million a year in a long-term contract. So they decided to cut back and get under the salary cap. And when they did get under the salary cap, the penalties now begin all over again. So if they got over it again now, they start the first year as 20%. So that's the framework of what we know about salary cap. And hopefully it's a little bit clearer to you now than it was before. We're talking about payroll. All right, the Yankees have been over the salary cap for an enormous number of years, but they don't care. They are at $254 million on a full year. The Dodgers were over at $227. Believe it or not, the Astros were $215, and the Red Sox at this point, when the salary cap was below $200, they were at $199, and the Cubs were $190. Those are the five teams that had the highest payrolls in baseball. And now, this is over the years, the 4 prior years. So you have to look back to 2016 when the cap was lower. But they were all over that. So what is the average payroll of a Major League Baseball team? The average payroll runs around $130 million. And there are teams that are below $100 million. The Orioles are only $50 million. All right, 50 million seems a lot of money to all of us, which it is, but 50 million is low in baseball. Tampa Bay was 57 million, and you know now the Red Sox have a general manager that came from Tampa Bay, Hein Bloom, and the Red Sox were hoping that he could put a team together for the Red Sox, as he did for the Rays, who are now a pretty good contending team. So we look at baseball and we look at all of this and we say, wow, what happens? Well, the per player salary is what happens. It happens because Major League Baseball has no cap on what they can pay a player. You can pay them anything you want to pay them, and for as long as you want to pay them. Mookie Betts got a $348 million contract with the Dodgers, and it's all built around being paid over a period of 25 years, which is a long time. The ownerships in baseball don't last 25 years, but that's how they're paying him. And it's various dollar amounts at various times in his career and after he retires. So they're not spending all of this money at one time, but they are committed to that regardless of what happens to the Major League team, who owns it or who doesn't own it.
Hey, Frank, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes, Tom.
It brought me a thought. All right, so say they have this obligation to that player to pay them that amount of money over 25 years. Now, what happens if Mookie Beck gets injured and he can't play?
Guaranteed money. There? Guaranteed money, Tom.
So does the team pay for that, or they take out insurance on them?
They take out insurance on these players, and some of this money that's guaranteed, they buy annuities with, so they annuitize some of these payments. They're annuitized over the period of time, and yeah, they're guaranteed. There's major insurance costs, and I'll spend a couple of minutes on that when I talk about expenses. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at. The average player in Major League Baseball, 32 teams, 40 on the roster, is about $4.4 million. That seems like, peanuts compared to the salaries that you hear. But there are always players who are only making the minimum. First-year players' minimum salary is $750,000. So any player that comes up to the major leagues, that wherever they came from, if they come up from Pawtucket or they come up from everywhere else, their salary jumps to the minimum major league salary of $750,000. So we look at Major League Baseball and we say, wow, there's a lot going on there. What's happening? Well, the past year, they played 60 games. Major League Baseball lost over $4 billion with a B, okay? No fans, no revenue, no TV revenue as to the extent that they got it. No concessions, no monies that came in. The Red Sox, as you all know, or maybe don't know, that 80% of NESN is owned by the Red Sox. But NESN makes its money, and the Red Sox make their money from NESN through advertising. And when you don't get people watching, you don't get the advertisers to come in and spend the money. So 20% of the NESN is the Bruins, 80% is the Red Sox. Their viewing capacity last year went down 45% over that 60-game schedule. So it is very difficult to recoup when you lose that kind of money. And what about the earnings? Everybody says, well, they're making tons of money. Well, there's no ticket revenue last year, no concession revenue. TV rights were way down. The Yankees get the biggest TV money of any team. They get $128 million from a network called the Yes Network in New York. That's the money they earn for their television rights, and they have an ownership in that network. So they get $128 million. Also, Major League Baseball has baseball contracts. As you know, Fox has a baseball Saturday night. Fox is on the weekends. ESPN is during the week. They have a baseball contract. All that money from the national broadcast is split up among the 32 teams. They all get an equal share of that money. And so that's where that money goes. It doesn't all go to the teams that are on the tube at that particular game. It's all going in that same pool that the Major League Baseball teams get. I want to touch on a couple of other areas here in terms of what are these teams worth. And the Washington Senators were just bought out by a guy named Lerner. $4.8 billion he paid for this team, okay? the Washington Nationals. They won the World Series 2 years ago, but that's what it is. To buy a team today, you need to spend on an average of more than $1.65 billion to buy a team. Okay, that money that's mind-boggling to all of us. Okay, but you want to know what teams are worth? You look at the Yankees, you look at the Dodgers, you look at the Red Sox, the Cubs, and Seattle. The Yankees, $683 million. The Dodgers, $556. The Sox, $519. Seattle is $315, and the Cubs are $470. Those teams are what you're looking at in terms of millions of dollars. But the Yankees, if you bought them today, that's what it would cost to get an invite into buying those teams. You got to put up that kind of money. But to buy the actual team, you're going to spend $5 billion to buy the Yankees. You're going to spend $3.3 to buy the Red Sox. Okay, the Cubs are 3.1 and the Dodgers are 3.4. So there's all kinds of money out there that we don't see as fans that are being spent by teams and owners to buy these teams. And don't forget, they support a major staff in their office, between 50 and 100 people. They support their major league, minor league teams to a great extent. So there's a lot of money out there. You got spring training expenses, you got administrative expenses, you got travel expenses, you got facility costs to keep Fenway Park the way it is. You got JetBlue Park in Fort Myers that they have to maintain. So there's a lot of costs involved here. So it is not all a big money maker just because they sell tickets. Tickets are only about 40% of their revenue. The rest comes from these other sources. So I thought I'd give you a little breakdown as to how baseball is operated and what is involved in the operation of baseball. So I'd like to turn this over to Dick because I think we need to talk about the Red Sox, and we need to talk about what we feel is somewhat of a lack of exposure. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Dick, if you want to talk a little bit about the Red Sox and what you think should be done that hasn't been done.
Yeah, but before that, let me just ask a question about the Pawtucket organization, what was known as the Pawtucket organization. The player. So when a player goes from Pawtucket or the AAA farm club of the Red Sox up to the Red Sox, he goes from a minor league contract to a major league contract.
That is correct.
And when he goes back, he drops back to...
He does. Now, there are some players that are in Pawtucket or in AAA baseball, especially in AAA baseball, that have been in the major leagues in the past and have had contracts. There's a guy named Rusty Castillo that the Red Sox signed for $71 million 5 years ago, and they gave him a 5-year contract for $71 million. I think he played probably 3 months or 6 months of that 5 years with the Red Sox. But he's getting paid $71 million because he signed a major league contract.
He was from Cuba.
He was from Cuba. That is correct. They also got another player from St. Louis 4 or 5 years ago who had a $30 million balance left on his contract, and he was injured all of those 3 years. He did play in Pawtucket, but he was paid $33 million for never played a game at Fenway Park. So if you sign a major league contract and you then go to the minor leagues, you are being paid on the major league contract. If you sign a minor league contract, then and you come to the big leagues, you're going to get paid at the minimum of the big league minimum, which is $750,000.
Yeah, well,
And that's going up. That's going to go up.
Yeah, not a bad
No.
way to make a few bucks, huh?
Start
Right.
practicing for baseball.
That's right. Be a baseball player. You don't get killed
No.
like you do in football and hockey, and you play a long time, especially with the DH.
Yeah.
And it's possible that the DH will come back into Major League Baseball in the National League. They are still talking about it, the Players Association. And there's a lot of players out there that haven't been signed because the National League, at this point, does not have the designated hitter in the National League. So I think the CBA, the baseball contract coming up next year, is going to have some contentious, I think, discussions about where they're going to go from here. We don't know what's going to happen this year. I'm sure that's a question in everybody's mind. The Red Sox are preparing for spring training in terms of the best they can. The Major League schedule is out for next year. The whole 181 game schedule is out there, but we don't know what's going to happen, and they don't either, as to where they're going to play, if they're going to start on time, if they're going to have minor league games, if they're going to have spring training. We don't know. We do know that there's a new team now in Worcester. It's no longer the Pawtucket team, it's now the Worcester team.
That's correct.
Right. So the floor is yours, Dick.
Well, thank you, Frank. Well, my issue with the Red Sox primarily is the fact that with all these experienced business people, how do they get themselves in such a financial bind? You talk about the salary cap, these other issues with players. They overplay these ball players, and in doing so, it doesn't leave much money to do other things, which I think they could do. And I like to see them address that. You never see with the salary cap is also in football. And I think maybe Major League Baseball picked up that idea from the NFL. But anyway, in doing so, the Sox, we've heard or read in the papers how the Major League organizations face financial difficulties. Well, you take a look at John Henry as an example, and Tom Werner, two very experienced business people, and I ask myself, how the heck do they get into this financial bind? Come on. We all have budgets in our own family, and why can't these guys adhere to that kind of stuff? That was just one issue I have in mind. The other issue was when the Sox let go Dave Dombrowski, who was the president of baseball operations. I believe that was his correct title.
That's correct.
And he didn't speak with Sam Kennedy at all. Sam Kennedy is the president of the Red Sox. And yet, granted, you're going to have personality conflicts, but, not to have the president of baseball operations not speak to the president of the Red Sox, that was very unusual. And yet, where was John Henry and Tom Werner? What were they trying to do to resolve and address this particular problem? They didn't do much, as far as I know, about taking care of that. And I thought that was bad. And the Sox, at one time I remember as a kid growing up, the Red Sox were all over the Jimmy Fund. You couldn't walk into that building without seeing Ted Williams or Gene Stevens or Mel Parnell or someone like that. Today, they may have Sox players going in there, but they never publicize that to let the community know what these players are doing outside of the interest in baseball. Conversely, if you take a look at what the Patriots are doing, the Patriots players have to sign as part of their contract that they will participate in the community somehow or other. In other words, give back what you have to the community. I don't know if the Sox have that in their contract.
They do.
Okay, and
They
that's
do.
if they do, it's recent.
They do have it in their contract. These contracts are all signed for the benefit of these players, Dick. What happens is they sign a contract, and in that contract, they have to make a commitment of so many dates during the baseball season, and that is the end of that. So they can't go out just because, let's say, here in Wakefield, we want to have the Red Sox come to a Rotary luncheon, and we can't do that because they are committed to somewhere else. But they can only make so many commitments because that's a contract situation. It also is true with signing autographs. Hard to believe, but it's true, because I know of two players who would not be able to sign autographs because they're under contract to an organization to have their autographs sold, and so they can't sign autographs. They can take a picture with you, but they can't sign an autograph. Now, this is how difficult it's become in baseball and in sports to do this. But they do have a contract. In their contract is how many commitments they have to make for the public, for hospitals and charitable organizations, etc. I happen to be the treasurer of a club called the Bo Sox Club, where we have luncheons 8 times a year. We get 400 members. And we have a Red Sox player try to come every time for lunch, or somebody in the Red Sox organization. But these players are hard to get because of their commitment and their contracts.
Now, when they show up, like to the Bo Sox Club, does that get credited to their contract?
No, they come to the Bo Sox Club is they volunteer to come.
Okay.
That's not part of their contract. But to go to children's hospitals or to other hospitals or other functions that the Red Sox promote, that's part of their contract. That they said they will commit 3, 4, 5, 6 of these a year or 10 a year, or whatever they wanted. Whatever they agree to do will be written in their contract.
That's
But
good.
they can volunteer anytime
They can volunteer.
want.
Yes, they
Yeah.
can. The players can volunteer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So if they wanted to volunteer to go to the Mass General Hospital,
Yes, they
Yeah.
can go.
they can do that without.
right.
That's
Yeah.
on their own. Yeah.
But that gets credited to the club or something like that.
No, it has nothing to do with their contract. That's all involuntary. But they have to commit themselves to at least whatever the Red Sox want them to, where they want them to go. So they want them to go wherever. They can commit themselves to 5 of these events that the Red Sox want
Yep.
them to go to. If they want to go to others on their own, they're welcome to. But the Red Sox do have some public relations in that respect where they are committed to these organizations. The Jimmy Fund, as you mentioned, is one of them. But there are others. There's a replica of Fenway Park right by Mass General Hospital there, where they conduct a ceremony there every year. And there are 2 Red Sox players that go there. So they have an agreement that say, we will go to so many commitments that you make for us, and that's it. We're not going to go to every one that you want us to go to. Or in some reality, they would be going to one every day for whatever, so they don't
Yeah.
do that.
But, in comparison to the Patriots, as an example, the Patriots publicize their players when they attend a certain function, whether it be the boys club and girls club of Boston or some other.
The food bank or something,
Where?
Oh, the food bank, too.
Yeah, they publicize that.
Yeah.
And so when I raise that question, they may be doing it, but the general public doesn't know what the Red Sox are doing. So from a public relations perspective, I think that's kind of a drawback, which they don't seem to follow through with. So they may be doing some things, and I'd like to see them do more of that, publicizing what they do. Because a lot of these players, I think, will go out there and do that. I can remember when Ted Williams would go, he would spend many hours and some nights at the Dana-Farber. He never got any publicity out of it, but people in the community knew that he was doing that kind of stuff. I think the other players who we have today may do that, but who the heck knows about it? No one.
You must remember, Dick, in those days are a lot different than today because major league sports, whether they're baseball or whatever, it's all about money in both ends. Players, managers, coaches, team owners, sports clubs, TV, it's all about money. Why do you think the National Football League is playing this year with all of this virus that's going around? It's about the huge contract that they have with money. Now you think college baseball is doing that. The Big Ten Conference in college baseball gets $50 million a game every week. The ACC, which the Boston College Eagles are in, $35 million a year goes to the ACC, split up among all these teams. It's all about money, which is a sad story in some respects, but that's what it's about.
Yeah, I know you're correct in that, Frank. Let me just switch gears for a second and talk about the club we had this past year for the Red Sox. And I don't think people in Boston can name more than 10 players on the club because the Sox just flushed out players
Right. Yeah.
to satisfy their financial needs. And I think they should have done a better job. I don't think they should have released some of the players they did, but hey, it's all financial, so that's what they did. And I think they brought in Chaim Bloom to take care of that. And my comment is the fact that what he did in Tampa is not the same thing as Boston. Boston, the fans get to know these players, know them quite well. Who the heck knows what the people are doing in Tampa? We don't really care. We're Boston fans, and we have a history of fandom here. And I think the Sox should have done a better job at that. So if you take a look at those things, those are some of my issues with the Red Sox that I'd like to see them address.
I'm sorry, are you through?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask both of you a question here, and one is, all right, start with you, Rich. What do you think, how do you think, I should say, how do you think this season, 2021 season, what do you think is going to happen with baseball and how it's going to go? What are your thoughts?
Well, they're going to take a shot at trying to put themselves back
Yeah.
in order. They're very cognizant of the
Pandemic.
COVID-19, you know. So they're going to take all sorts of precautions to make sure that the players and the fans are protected. I haven't seen that plan yet, but I'm sure they're going to do something like that because, as Frank says, this is all financial, and they want to make sure they protect their financial interests.
Yeah.
If they don't do it, then all of a sudden these players are going to get sick, the fans will get sick, and the thing will go down the tubes. It's not good.
It appears, Tom, that there will be no fans in Major League Baseball till at least July, from what the rumors out there now are.
Oh, that's
And
good
there's
to
no,
know.
and there's, and they'll be playing. They may change the schedule around like they did last year because they did not have a balanced schedule last year. The Red Sox never played a team in the Midwest. They never played a team in California or in Texas. They all played teams in the Eastern Division that they're in because they wanted to cut back the travel. They wanted to cut back the expensive travel. They wanted to cut back the expensive hotels. All of this runs into the cost of running a baseball team. So I don't know what's going to happen this year. Nothing has been out there yet in terms of that. But they're saying the fans may not be into baseball for at least the summer, the midsummer.
Well, that's good to know, and I think it's time to wrap this up because we've given everybody an awful lot of information, but it's something that we all got together and said this would be interesting to talk about right now during the off season and what's going on. So here you have all this information that you can sit down and decipher what you want to do with it. But as it says, as Frank said, the Red Sox, well, we haven't heard anything different this year than what we've had for the next year. So thank you very much for listening, and have any suggestions, give us a holler here at WCAT, and we'll see what we can do about answering them. Thank you once again, and have a good holiday.